Welcome back to the Remdesivir files. Today's episode is called Trials and Turbulence, and we are going deep into the scientific backbone of Remdesivir's journey, the clinical trials. Specifically, we'll focus on three major ones: ACTT1, WHO Solidarity, and the Simple Trials. Joining me is the expert guest, Saakshi Sharma. Welcome, Saakshi.
Thank you, Sowmya. It's great to be here and talk about what was really one of the most high pressure periods in clinical trial history. The speed, scale, and scrutiny were unlike anything we have seen.
Let's start with ACTT1, often cited as a trial that changed everything for Remdesivir. What was the rationale behind it, and how was it designed?
Absolutely. The Adaptive COVID-19 Treatment Trial 1 or ACTT1 was led by the US National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, NIAID, and began in early 2020. The goal was to evaluate potential therapeutics for hospitalized COVID-19 patients, and Remdesivir was the first candidate. It was a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial, the gold standard in clinical research. Around 1,063 patients were enrolled across multiple countries. Importantly, patients had evidence of lower respiratory tract infection, meaning this wasn't for mild cases. The primary endpoint was initially clinical status on day 15, measured on an 8-point ordinal scale, ranging from not hospitalized to death. Midway, the endpoint was changed to time to recovery, which was defined as the first day a patient reached category 1, 2, or 3, basically discharged or near discharge.
Why the change in endpoint mid-trial? Isn't that unusual?
Good question. It's definitely not typical, but ACTT1 was an adaptive trial, meaning its design allowed for modification based on interim data. In this case, time to recovery was proving to be a more sensitive measure of drug efficacy than the ordinal scale. This flexibility helped the researchers pivot without compromising the integrity of the results. In the context of a global emergency, speed without sacrificing rigor was key.
And what were the key findings?
Remdesivir reduced median recovery time from 15 days to 11 days. That's a 31% improvement, which is significant for a respiratory virus where ICU beds were in short supply. Mortality on day 15 was lower in the Remdesivir group, 7.1% versus 11.9% in placebo. But this wasn't statistically significant. So while it did not conclusively reduce mortality, it showed a clear benefit in speeding up recovery in moderately ill patients, especially those needing supplemental oxygen but not on invasive ventilation.
Let's move to the WHO Solidarity trial, which had very different results. What made it so different?
Yes, this trial sparked a lot of debate. The WHO Solidarity trial was a global mega trial launched across 405 hospitals in 30 plus countries, enrolling over 11,000 patients. Its strength was a sheer scale and speed, but it also had limitations. It was open label, so both physicians and patients knew what treatment was given. That introduces potential bias, particularly in subjective outcomes. Also, the primary endpoint was in hospital mortality, a very hard outcome, but perhaps too blunt for a drug like Remdesivir, which shows more nuanced benefits like faster recovery or reduced ventilation time. The trial concluded that Remdesivir did not significantly reduce mortality. However, when you dig into the data, subgroup analysis shows possible benefits in early or moderate cases, but these weren't the primary focus.
So, would you say the trial design affected the results?
Absolutely. While Solidarity was valuable for providing broad, real-world insights, its design was not optimized to detect moderate benefits in disease progression or recovery time. It was more like using sledgehammer to test for the fine details. So instead of contradicting ACTT1, I would say they looked at different things in different ways with different level of precision.
Let's talk about the simple trials run by Gilead. How do they fit into the puzzle?
The simple trials were industry-sponsored, open-label studies focused on hospitalized patients with moderate and severe COVID-19. There were two main arms, one comparing 5-day versus 10-day remdesivir and another comparing remdesivir to standard of care in moderate cases. They enrolled about 600 to 1,000 patients depending on the arm. The results showed that a 5-day course was as effective as a 10-day course in moderate illness. That was an important finding from a resource allocation perspective because shorter courses meant more vials available during shortages. However, because the study wasn't blinded and lacked a placebo control, it wasn't viewed as a definitive on efficacy. But it did support safety and help optimize dosing strategies.
So, with all these different trials, ACTT1, Solidarity, Simple, how do we make sense of the mixed results?
That's the key question. When viewed together, the evidence suggests remdesivir helps hospitalized patients recover faster, especially when given it in the early disease course. It's less effective in late-stage critically ill patients who are already on mechanical ventilation. Mortality benefits are modest at best and context-dependent. The optimal use case is moderate disease with oxygen dependency, but not yet critical. The meta-analysis later confirmed this trend, showing moderate reductions in time to recovery, slight improvements in oxygen needs, and acceptable safety.
What do these trials teach us about emergency research during pandemics?
They teach us that rigor can and speed can coexist, but we must interpret each trial through the lens of its design. No single study tells the whole story. ACTT1 gives us precision, solidarity gave us breadth, and simple gave us dosing insight. Together, they shaped how remdesivir was and wasn't used.
Brilliantly explained. Thank you so much for unpacking these complex trials for us, Saakshi. In the next episode, we'll explore Remdesivir's emergency use and data thresholds. Until then, stay safe, stay curious.